What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Wednesday, May 21st edition of the Ship My Money Show, early morning version, taking a look at the early DraftKings slate. And most importantly, for the first time ever since I've been doing these shows, I actually started on time, scheduled it for 11:30, started at 11:30, and I don't think that's ever happened. So excited about that. Would not have guessed that it would be a morning show that happened for the first time, but going to go through game by game. We have a 5-game MLB slate. The Cleveland Minnesota game was removed. No real weather concerns, it doesn't look like, on this slate. Maybe a little bit of rain around for the Mariners and White Sox game, but nothing that looks overly concerning from a DFS standpoint. So going to go game by game as usual, talk about my player exposures as things stand right now. More importantly, talk about the matchups for every team, projected ownership for every team, all of that stuff. And I'm going to use the Run the Sims projections that you see on the screen. These are available for you as well. Link is in the description below, and you can use the promo code UTAMLB that you see at the bottom of your screen to get 10% off. That is available through May 31st, so check that out. If you're not in need of the full projections package, the fully detailed downloadable version that you see on the screen, we do also have a cheaper $10 a month version for you that just overlays our projections onto your DraftKings lineup page. So if you're building lineups by hand, only playing a couple lineups, looking to late swap lineups, all of that stuff, it is useful for that. For a price point that makes more sense if you're, a lower stakes single entry player. That is available for you at that same link in the description below as well. Now, getting into it, starting with the Chicago Cubs taking on the Miami Marlins in Miami. Max Meyer pitching for the Marlins, and I'm on the wrong slate on this page. Max Meyer pitching for Miami. Cade Horton on the mound for the Cubs, and I'm getting to a lot of this one offensively. I am getting to some of the pitching as well. Obviously, only 5 games on the slate, only 10 pitchers to choose from. So while Max Meyer, for example, might not be somebody that you would typically look to all that much in a tough matchup with the Cubs, he is getting some ownership on this slate, projected for about 17% ownership. I'm getting to 10%, so a little bit below the field. It's kind of a spot where he seemingly has made big improvements this year. He's a former, I believe, 3rd overall pick, highly regarded pitching prospect. Only struck out like 18.5% of hitters last year, which was disappointing. But through 50 innings this year, that has jumped up to 27%. His stuff plus grade has jumped 8 points from last year. His pitching plus grade has jumped almost 14 points. That's a metric that looks to combine stuff with your ability to actually locate pitches where you want to locate them. And he's been well above average in that this year. So we've seen improvement across the board from Meyer. He's been very good this year. He has the underlying talent, the underlying pedigree. That being said, this is also a very difficult matchup against the Cubs. They rank 5th in WRC plus against right-handed pitching so far this season. They rank 16th in strikeout percentage. So wouldn't fault anyone for playing Meyer. Certainly talented, certainly has upside at $8,500, but it is also a really difficult matchup for him against the Cubs. On the other side, we have Cade Horton coming in at $8K. He is making his 2nd major league start. He's thrown 9 total innings for the Cubs this year. At AAA, he made 6 starts, went 29 innings, struck out 30.6% of hitters. Projects to be about a 20% K guy, mid-4 FIP projection for him going forward. So somebody else that, at 8K, you probably don't have a ton of interest in on a full-size slate, but he does have a favorable matchup here with Miami. They, so far this season, against right-handed pitching, Miami ranks 6th in strikeout percentage. They only have a 98 WRC plus, which ranks 23rd. So it is a favorable matchup for him. The game is in Miami as well. Pretty good park for pitching. 14% projected ownership coming into Horton. I'm getting to 21%. You can see that we have him projected similarly in terms of fantasy points to Max Meyer, coming in slightly behind him. We have a higher projection on Meyer now than we did when I ran lineups. So I would expect when I rerun stuff to get a bit more Meyer than I was. Did not have the Cubs lineup when I ran everything. We do have it now. So Meyer's projection actually jumped like 0.8 of a point. The reason for that probably being no Carson Kelly. Matt Shaw is in the lineup. Highly projected prospect, but hasn't done a whole lot in his opportunities so far. So I think that is probably what drove up the projection a little bit. feels like somebody else is missing too, and I just can't put my finger on it, but those two are the ones that stand out. So anyway, you can see that we have, Horton with a similar projection to Meyer, just a little bit lower, but he is also $500 less expensive and getting a little bit less ownership. So I'm a little bit above the field on him in this matchup. Moving over to the offenses, though, I am getting to both sides of this one, but for Miami, I think it's more so getting bigger stacks. They're my most used, or third most used 5-man stack, fourth most used 4-man stack. For the Cubs, it's a couple of players in particular individually driving my exposures. So starting on the Cubs side, 14% projected ownership to Pete Crow Armstrong at 5,400. I am getting a ton of him. He's my highest owned hitter on the slate right now. He's in about 60% of the lineups that I built. He gives you a ton of power upside. He gives you a ton of stolen base upside. And at 5,400, I think still reasonably priced. If we look at the entire slate overall, we have PCA coming in tied for fourth with Gunnar Henderson in home run projection on the slate. In stolen base projection, he has the fourth highest stolen base projection as well. So, there's not that many players that are going to grade out that well in both of those. It just increases your standard deviation, increases your upside. So if you're stacking the Cubs, obviously he looks really good, but he looks really good as a one-off as well. It's just difficult to get more individual upside, especially on a slate where you don't have Shohei Ohtani, you don't have Aaron Judge, you don't have, those otherworldly power bats. PCA just looks like one of the best overall plays. And then Kyle Tucker, similar, you can see on the screen, tied for third with Pete Crow Armstrong in stolen base projection. He is coming in a little bit behind him, but not too far in home run projection. But he's also $1,100 more expensive. So that's why I'm only getting to 20% Tucker versus 60% PCA. But really like both of those guys individually. Getting to about 14% Michael Busch, $4,900 price tag on him. He is batting fifth. He does have power. There is pinch hit risk for him in general. Miami's bullpen, though, only has one left-handed reliever, and he threw 33 pitches yesterday, so probably not going to pitch today, which does lower that pinch hit risk. You can see on the screen, we do have pinch hit risk in our projections. This number is how often in our in-house play-by-play sim model, how often the player ends up getting pinch hit for. Obviously, we have logic for that. That includes the opposing bullpen. So for Busch here, only a 6% chance of being pinch hit for. If Miami had more lefties in their bullpen or any lefties that we thought were going to be available, that is generally going to be a higher number on Michael Busch. But you do have relatively low pinch hit risk for him today because Miami's probably not able to bring a left-handed pitcher in to face him. So that does make him look better than usual. I'm getting 5-6% Ian Happ, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson. The field is a little bit higher on those guys. They're higher on Seiya Suzuki as well, who has been excellent to start the season. But like I said, I'm not getting a lot of full Chicago stacks. I am getting a lot of minis really revolving around Pete Crow Armstrong and then like one of Kyle Tucker or Michael Busch, mixing in a little bit of Happ, Horner, Swanson. If you get to the Cubs, great. But I saw somebody mention it in chat. It is difficult to full stack them and still have a lineup you really like. DraftKings, once again, did a pretty good job on this slate of pricing where you have, 5,400 for PCA, 6,500 for Tucker, but 5,200 for Suzuki. And then everybody else basically between like 4K and 5K. That gets pretty expensive when you don't have like really cheap pitchers to work with. So, obviously they're capable of breaking a slate and making it so you have to have them, but I understand why I'm not getting a ton as far as full stacks go. And I am prioritizing, the highest upside guys in Crow Armstrong and Tucker. On the Miami side, I am getting to them against Horton. Augustin Ramirez and Eric Wagman showing up as my two highest owned guys. One thing I will say, and I do need to dial this back, I do know that we tend to be not crazy high or anything, but a little high on Ramirez and Wagaman just because of the way that we currently, and we're working to improve it, but the way we currently account for the way players are hitting the ball, Ramirez and Wagaman both grade out a little bit like artificially high. So I do need to just manually downgrade them a little bit. But either way, at their respective salaries, 3,300 for Wagaman batting third, first base and outfield eligible. Ramirez as one of your better power hitting catchers. He projects to be an above average power hitter, around an average hitter overall. He is batting second. He's only 4,100. You're going up against an unproven pitcher in Horton that projects to be fine, but nothing special. So I do like getting to those guys. I did just want to point out that I'll probably end up a little bit lower just because I'll walk that projection back a little bit, just because of knowing that we have seen that little bit of a slight bias there on those guys in particular. Jesus Sanchez getting 14% ownership. I'm getting to about 16%. Another value bat here from Miami at 3,600. I think this is just kind of a useful team for filling out lineups as a secondary stack, or like I said, using them as a primary stack is fine as well. You'll be able to get good one-offs around them. You'll be able to get good pitching around them. Otto Lopez coming in 12% of the time for me. He is batting fifth at 4K, and then it drops off from there. Kyle Stowers in 9% of my lineups. Field is at 5%. He's been fantastic this year. Can't really say enough good things about him. He's $4,600, and on the one hand, I think you can kind of look at that and be like, it's a Miami bat at 4,600. It's an unproven player. Like, I don't want to pay that. But everything he's done so far this year has warranted this price tag. So far this season against right-handed pitching, Kyle Stowers has 134 plate appearances with a 431 expected WOBA, 345 expected ISO. He strikes out a ton, has a 33% strikeout percentage. That's been an issue with him going back to his time with the Orioles. He is a high K guy, but he has done a very good job of doing damage when he makes contact so far this year. Now, I don't expect him to continue producing at the level he has, but within the context of DFS, he's also not priced at 4,600 for the type of production he's given you so far. That's, a 5,500 plus bat. He's priced to be an above average hitter, which is what he's always projected to be going back to his time with Baltimore, even if he didn't live up to it. And obviously you've seen the improvements so far this season in Miami. So I don't mind getting a bit above the field on him, getting to 5 to 10% Connor Norby, Graham Pauley, a little bit of Derek Hill. So overall, I am getting to Miami more than the field. I think that they do give you some power upside, and most importantly, they are just affordably priced here. Baltimore taking on Milwaukee in Milwaukee, where the Orioles look to lose their 9th straight game as they chase the number 1 pick in next year's draft. Taking on Milwaukee, we have Tomo Sagano on the mound for Baltimore, Chad Patrick going for Milwaukee. Neither of these guys project all that great. Neither one looks like a priority for the field. 12% projected ownership coming into Patrick at 7,500. I'm getting to about 5%. Talked about this yesterday before the Orioles once again shit the bed and made Logan Henderson look very good. But this is a lineup that actually does have good hitters, even though the record is awful. Like, in terms of record, this is a team that is in the same class with the White Sox and the Pirates, where the only team clearly worse than them this year is the Rockies. But if you look at what they've done against right-handed pitching, they have the 6th best WRC plus in baseball. The Pirates ranked 28th, the White Sox ranked 29th, the Rockies ranked 30th. This is not, especially against right-handed pitching, an offense in terms of production. And some of these guys have gotten very unlucky this year as well. Adley Rutschman has been very unlucky in terms of actual WOBA versus expected. But looking at WRC plus, which is what they've actually done, it's not expected numbers, they're still the 6th best in baseball. So, keep that in mind. Even though they're an unbelievably bad team, they're 17 games under 500. This offense against right-handed pitching specifically has been very, very good. So I'm not getting a ton of Chad Patrick here. He projects to be an okay pitcher, like 4.2 to 4.5 FIP in most projection models, around the 20% strikeout percentage. Very similar to a couple of other pitchers we have on this slate, including Horton going for the Cubs, obviously in a better matchup there against Miami, better park for limiting runs as well. Sagano, not a great strikeout pitcher, but has been solid in terms of just being a veteran pitcher. Obviously, he's a rookie in the majors, but he's like 35 years old. He's a former, whatever the equivalent of the Cy Young is in Japan. And he is like, kind of when you think about like your stereotypical Japanese pitcher coming over, he's kind of that guy. Like, he doesn't throw hard. He doesn't have great stuff. His stuff plus grade so far this year is only 92.3, which is below average, but his pitching plus grade is 100.4. So he's been average there. He commands the ball well. He, I guess, is relatively deceptive. He's smart. He knows how to pitch, lives up to that cliche. So he's not a great DFS guy. 13.9% strikeout percentage so far this year. He's 7,700, getting 7% ownership. I'm getting to 9%. He's the kind of guy that at this price, you just ignore in this matchup on a larger slate. But on a 5-gamer, he's going to fall into some lineups, but certainly not any level of a priority. Offensively, we, at least when I ran lineups, did not have an Orioles lineup. We, I think, still do not. So it probably means they're going to do something stupid. But with the projected lineup that we had for the show, I am getting to the Orioles a good amount. Gunnar Henderson in particular showing up in about 30% of my lineups. He's projected for 20% ownership. He's down to $4,400. This is just a stupid price tag on Gunnar. He has not been as good as he was last year. 155 WRC plus last year. That was heavily driven by his first half of the season as well, where he was a legitimate MVP candidate. He dropped off in the second half. And then this year, last I looked, like a 115, 116 WRC plus, still an above average hitter, just not an MVP candidate. And at 4,400, he still has power upside, still has stolen base upside. And one thing to keep in mind with him as well is that he did miss a large part of spring training with an oblique injury. He missed part of the beginning of the season, got off to a slow start. He is somebody that I think it was very reasonable to expect to take a little bit of time to get back into the swing of things this season, get off to a slow start. So this price tag just doesn't make a ton of sense for him. You can see the high home run projection, decent stolen base projection on him as well. So assuming he's hitting, probably third, I like him quite a bit at shortstop. The Brewers bullpen is a concern in general for the Orioles with the way their lineup usually looks. Milwaukee carries 3 left-handed relievers in their bullpen. Now, they do possibly only have one available today. Jared Koenig has pitched 3 straight games. He threw 11 pitches on Monday, 3 on Tuesday, 14 yesterday. It was kind of up in the air if he would be available yesterday. He clearly was. There's basically no way he's pitching today. And then Tyler Alexander threw 33 pitches yesterday, maybe available today, maybe not. If you go and look in his previous games, he did have a stretch where he threw 27 pitches followed by 24. So I wouldn't rule him out today, but there's a decent chance he's not available. And then Rob Zastrin, whatever that guy's last name is, should be available today. I mentioned this because if you have all of those lefties available, then what most likely happens is when this lineup turns over for the third time, Jackson Holliday, Gunnar Henderson, they're facing left-handed relievers. Milwaukee still has 1.5, we'll call it, relievers available today, left-handed relievers. So they can still match up, but not quite as much as they normally can. But it is still a bullpen that can give the Orioles problems later in games because they do have lefties, at least one available. Cedric Mullins only getting 6% ownership, $4,500 price tag, probably hitting towards the bottom of the order, but still showing up as a really strong play for me because of his home run upside and stolen base upside at sub 10% projected ownership. On a 5-game slate, you're just not going to care quite as much that he is hitting further down in the lineup, most likely. We actually had him projected to hit higher in the order, so that's probably driving this a little bit as well. Our data provider has him leading off and Holiday hitting 6th, even though Holiday is the leadoff hitter now. So Mullins will probably come down for me a little bit too. But the power and stolen base upside is still there, even though that projection is likely to lower once we get a confirmed lineup. He's 4,500, but he has hit well this year. He does give you stolen base upside. So far this season, against right-handed pitching, Mullins has 130 plate appearances, 207 expected ISO. So that power upside is there, even though, again, I do think he'll project a little bit lower once we get that lineup, assuming he's not actually leading off. Similarly, Jackson Holliday getting 10% ownership at 3,600. I only got to 7% when I ran these lineups, but assuming he's at the top of the order, I probably will get a bit more. He looks like a good value bat. He's been one of the only bright spots in the Orioles lineup so far this season. You're seeing him develop into a very good player so far this year. Still only 21 years old, like a 115 to 120 WRC plus so far against right-handed pitching, a 239 expected ISO, 374 expected WOBA, only striking out 17.5% of the time as well. So he's going to look like a good value bat. Adley Rutschman's down to 3,900. I've mentioned it a lot, but you're just seeing his price tag continue to fall as a result of lack of actual production, when in reality, he has 121 plate appearances against right-handed pitching this year. 159 actual ISO, 246 expected ISO. So his expected ISO is about 90 points better than his actual. 298 actual WOBA, 397 expected WOBA. That's about 100 points better than his actual. He's hitting the ball hard. He's in a ballpark that is good for hitting home runs. Going to just keep playing Adley Rutschman at these reduced price tags. Urias, Mountcastle, Kjerstad, O'Hearn. These guys are all fine as well. O'Hearn is a good hitter, a lot of power there, but first base outfield eligible. There's just always going to be plenty of options. But Gunnar looks like a priority. I like Adley a lot. I like Jackson a lot. And I like Mullins at low ownership as a high upside play as well. On the other side for Milwaukee, getting to them too. Again, this is a top 10 ballpark for hitting home runs. Sagano has not been great overall this year. I mentioned that he does have good command. He does have the ability to just be knowledgeable and know how to pitch, but he has still allowed a 194 expected ISO to lefties, 245 to righties, around a 14% strikeout percentage to both sides of the plate. So certainly not anybody that you're too concerned about taking hitters against. Christian Yelich is down to a $4,100 salary. Jackson Chourio is down to $4,200. Turang is cheap at $4,400. So you do have some high upside value or relative value in this Milwaukee lineup. Turang gives you stolen base upside in addition to a 385 expected WOBA. Yelich, not what he used to be, but still has a 188 expected ISO against righties this year. Jackson Chourio has not been good this year. 265 expected WOBA, 158 expected ISO after having his great rookie year last year. He's kind of flipped with Jackson Holliday, where last year it was frustrating as an O's fan because you had the three Jackson rookies where you had Jackson Merrill, Jackson Chourio, and Jackson Holliday, and Merrill and Chourio were fantastic while Holliday shit the bed. Merrill continues to be incredibly good, but now you have Chourio looking like he's not even a major leaguer while Jackson Holliday has figured it out. It's just one of those things you see in baseball where, some guys come up and struggle in their initial adjustment to the major leagues. Other guys come up and dominate, and then the league adjusts to them and they have to readjust. We're kind of seeing that play out now where Holliday made his adjustments and has, for now, figured things out, where Chourio now needs to readjust to whatever the league found on him. But he does still have underlying upside with power and speed. Rhys Hoskins, if he's in the lineup at 4K, looks fine. If it's not Rhys Hoskins, then it would be Jake Bauers, who has power from the left side. The Orioles bullpen today, if it is Bauers, we actually have the lineup, and it is Bauers. Hoskins and Bauers are both in. Forgot we have this one. So you have Eric Haas in place of William Contreras. So this lineup does not look quite as good as it normally does. Bauers is not getting into my lineups right now at 3,900, but I am getting above the field on Hoskins at 16%. Like I said, you don't have drastic splits for Sagano. He actually has given up more expected power to righties than lefties. You have the better spot in the order for Hoskins. The Orioles bullpen, as far as availability goes, Gregory Soto should be available today. Keegan Aiken, I don't know. He opened yesterday, but he only threw 18 pitches. CNL Perez should be available today. So at the very least, the Orioles have two lefty relievers. They might have three available depending on how they handle Aiken. So you do have relatively high pinch hit risk on Jake Bauers. We have it at 35%. So good chance that he ends up getting pinch hit for once you get into the bullpen. So that's driving down his projection a little bit. But Yelich, Chourio, Turang, Hoskins, I'm even or above the field on all of those guys. Getting to some Caleb Durbin as a value bat as well. Getting to a little bit of Eric Haas at 3,700. So both of these offenses just look pretty good to me. Good park for offense. And, it's a slate where you don't have Coors Field. You don't have the best parks. You don't have Dodger Stadium. You don't have Fenway. Milwaukee and Tampa Bay are going to be the most favorable hitters parks on this slate. So I do like both of the offenses here. Houston taking on Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay, about a 5 implied run total for the Astros, 3.5 to 4 for the Rays. Hunter Brown going for the Astros, Taj Bradley for the Rays. And to me, this is the most interesting pitching matchup to actually talk about, to actually have, useful things to say from an analysis standpoint. And it's two pitchers going in complete opposite directions, two pitchers that I am getting a lot of today. But Hunter Brown has, I talked about this yesterday with Skubal pitching. Hunter Brown, to me, it's neck and neck, him and Tarek Skubal for the American League Cy Young. Hunter Brown has been absolutely fantastic. This is somebody that's always had really good stuff, and he's been good, but he's gone from good to great so far this year. Strikeout percentage has jumped from 25% last year to 32% this year. Pitching plus has jumped 10.5 points from 105 to 115.5. Stuff plus has jumped 6 points from 104.5 to 111. Fastball velo is up from 96 to 97 miles per hour on average. He's just been incredibly good. I've mentioned on a couple of shows the outcome metric that I created just to try and grade pitchers on their ability to get the most favorable outcomes from at bats, weighting strikeouts the heaviest, but then also looking for ground balls and infield pop-ups. Hunter Brown has been 1.36 standard deviations better than average in that metric. Just most at bats for him result in a quality outcome. Nearly a third of them result in strikeouts. You have a park that is good for offense, but a Tampa Bay offense that also has the third highest strikeout percentage in baseball against right-handed pitching this year. Brown's getting 48% projected ownership. I'm getting the 68%. We have him projected north of 20 fantasy points here. And again, our projections do a good job of factoring in all of the data that we have available. Not just saying, oh, well, he's done this through the first month of the season, so he's better than he ever has been. But weighting that all of his metrics look fantastic this year. His strikeout percentage is off the charts this year. Not just saying, well, this is what he's always been in the past, and we need to wait till next year to factor in this year. We do factor in all of the available data that we have. And so you're seeing a nice little bump here on Hunter Brown. Taj Bradley on the other side going the complete opposite direction of Hunter Brown, but his salary is going along with him. He's down to $6,700. This is not a price tag that you typically would expect to see on Taj Bradley, just given the strikeout ability that you've seen from him in the past. It's warranted, though. He has fallen off in any metric that I care to look at. Strikeout percentage last year was 26.5%. This year, it's down to 19%. Pitching plus was 100 last year. It's down to 88.7. Stuff plus was 108.5 last year. It's down to 100.5 this year. Fastball velo has stayed about the same. So there are concerns here. Like, there's nothing that I can look at and say, oh yeah, I think he's the same pitcher he was last year. That being said, he does still grade out as having average stuff. It's pretty likely that his strikeout percentage maybe doesn't get back to the 26.5% mark from last year, but settles into something better than the 19% we've seen so far this year. And you're getting the drop in salary to account for it. And you also have a 5-game slate where you don't have a ton of great pitching options. So I'm getting to 32% Bradley right now. Fields at 13.5%. You have a right-handed heavy Houston lineup. It doesn't have a ton of power. You don't have Yordan Alvarez. Obviously, Kyle Tucker is no longer on the team. So far this season, only an 18% strikeout percentage against righties for Bradley. He has held them to a 149 expected ISO, so that's good. If you go back to last year, he actually gave up a little bit more power to righties than lefties. 23% strikeout percentage against righties since last season. But at this price tag, in an okay matchup against Houston, I am just getting to Bradley. I'm getting him a little bit more than the field, or not even a little bit. I'm getting him more than the field is, and kind of just hoping things work out. I think the price tag bakes in a lot of the concerns that you would have. I am getting to the Astros as well, though, because Bradley does not look like a particularly good pitcher at this point, and the Astros are reasonably priced. They are in Tampa Bay, which is a good park for hitting. So I'm getting to the Astros as well. Jeremy Pena leading off at 4,200. You're getting 15 to 20% ownership to all of Pena, Paredes, Altuve, Diaz, Christian Walker. And I do think it's warranted. I'm getting to 31% Pena at shortstop. So he's neck and neck with Gunnar Henderson for my highest owned shortstops right now. Isaac Paredes in 25% of my lineups facing his former team. Jose Altuve has not been any good this year, but as a result, he's down to $3,800. Still has second base eligibility in addition to being outfield eligible. So I'm right around the field on him at 17%. I'm close to the field on Yainer Diaz at 16%. I'm getting about 9% Christian Walker at 3,700. He hasn't hit for as much power this year as usual, but he is still hitting for power, and you probably will see that power rebound sooner than later. Jake Myers getting 8% ownership at 3,700, batting sixth. I'm getting to 10% of him. And then I'm getting a little bit of Brendan Rodgers, Mauricio Dubon, and Cam Smith as well. So I am getting to the Astros. They're my second highest owned stack overall. They're my second highest 5-man stack behind the Orioles. They're my highest 4-man stack, second highest 3-man stack. So I'm just playing both sides of this one. And I think it makes a lot of sense just when you think about it from a pricing standpoint. You have a $6,700 Taj Bradley on a slate that doesn't have a lot of great pitching. He clearly can pay that salary off, relatively easily. And if he doesn't, you have a very cheap Houston team. So it's that window where like Taj Bradley isn't at least a useful play and the Astros aren't useful bats is relatively small given the salaries, because you don't need, 30 points from Bradley for him to be useful. You don't need 30 points from any of these Houston hitters for them to be useful plays. So getting to both sides of this one, if you're playing multiple lineups, makes sense. If you're playing one lineup, I think choosing either one is perfectly fine. On the Tampa Bay side, I am getting to them a little more than I expected, given how well Hunter Brown projects for us, but you're just not getting ownership here. 7% projected ownership to a $4,300 Yandy Diaz. I'm getting to 17%. I will say he is one of the hitters that does tend to grade out really well for us in general, relative to the market, kind of similar to Ramirez and Wagaman from Miami, PCA to an extent as well, but PCA is a little bit different since it's driven by stolen base upside also. So I guess maybe it shouldn't surprise me that I am getting to Diaz. Josh Lowe, 2x the field. I'm getting to 10%. He's 5% owned. Good hitter, 4,400. Has some speed as well. So I don't mind either of them. Caballero, Brandon Lau. Like, I'm at least getting to the guys at the top and in the middle of the order that are relatively inexpensive. They do have power. They do obviously give you negative correlation against Brown. I'm not getting any crazy amounts of them, but I am a little bit north of the field on those four. Tigers are facing the Cardinals in St. Louis, getting back to another ballpark that is not great for offense. Andre Payante on the mound for the Cardinals. Brant Herter for Detroit. No Herter for me, no Herter for the field. He's 6K, not getting any ownership. I'm not getting to him, like I said. On the other side, though, for Payante, he's a really interesting pitcher just in terms of his underlying talent. He's not a great DFS pitcher because he doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. So far this season, Payante striking out only 15% of hitters. That's down from 19% last year. He does get a lot of ground balls, though. He has the highest ground ball percentage among qualified starters so far this season. On most slates, that isn't something that's going to make you super interested, since you don't get, extra fantasy points for ground balls like you do strikeouts. But on this slate at only 6,800, getting 10% ownership, I'm getting to 9%. I think the field's pretty much got it right here. It's not an easy matchup against the Tigers. Their active roster ranks 12th in strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching. They're 4th in WRC+. They're a good offense, but Payante is good at keeping the ball on the ground, limiting power. Lefties so far this season against Payante do have a 217 expected ISO compared to a 116 expected ISO for righties. That is a concern when you go up against this Tigers lineup that has Kerry Carpenter, that has Riley Green. Colt Keith is batting 6th. He has power from the left side, but it is likely that he does a decent job of limiting Torkelson. Malloy is hitting second for whatever reason. He's right-handed, but you do have 4 lefties in the top 6 with Carpenter, McKinstry, Green, and Keith. All those guys have at least some power, some more than others, obviously. So that is a concern from a splits standpoint. Looking at the offenses here, and again, this isn't a great park for home runs. Right around the field on Kerry Carpenter, 12% projected ownership. I'm getting to 11% at 4,200. Plenty of power upside there for Carpenter. Price tag has started to come up, but you have to keep in mind that early in the season, it was just unbelievably low. So his salary rising doesn't mean that like you're overpaying for him now. 292 expected ISO against right-handed pitching this year. I'm not getting a lot of Riley Green. I wish that I was. $4,700 salary, 308 expected ISO against right-handed pitching. Certainly wouldn't fault anyone for getting there. But again, this isn't a great park for hitting home runs. McKinstry, 4,100 with multi-position eligibility. I'm getting about 7%. Fields at about 10%. So no real stand there. But other than that, not really getting to much of the Tigers. 4% Torkelson, 2% or less of everybody else. And they're all sub 10% owned. So if you want to go to the Tigers, I think from just an upside/talent standpoint, I think it's fine. But I don't love their pricing relative to some other spots. I don't love the ballpark. Don't love the matchup in general, given that Payante is good at keeping the ball on the ground. On the other side, for St. Louis, I'm not really getting to them. The field's getting to them a little bit more than I am. 14% projected ownership coming into Mason Wynn. I don't really have him at 3,800. That's just been more Pena and more Gunnar Henderson for me, at least right now. It's a bullpen game for the Tigers. Those just generally aren't very appealing. Brant Herter, like I said, getting the start, but the most pitches he's thrown in a game this year is 40. He hasn't gone more than 3 innings in a game. So you're likely to just get multiple arms thrown out there, which is not super appealing, having to see a different guy every time you come up to hit, or maybe you get 2 at-bats against one person. Contreras getting 10% ownership. He's been very good this year. He's only 3,900, does only have first base eligibility. I'm only getting to about 3%, though. And then I'm not really getting anything else from St. Louis. There's about 8.5% ownership coming into Herrera. He is batting cleanup, but he's also 5K. Brendan Donovan's been very good this year, but he's up to 4,500. Second base eligible, getting 6% ownership. So I think the Cardinals are kind of similar to the Tigers in that if you wanted to play them just based on upside, I think it's fine. And like Mason Wynn and Contreras do give you some value. But I would actually, I think, rather be getting to the Tigers side just because I like the matchup better for Kerry Carpenter, Riley Green, the lefties in general in that lineup. Also, just wanted to double check the Cardinals bullpen while I was talking about that. The Cardinals do have 3 left-handed relievers in their bullpen. One of them, Steven Matz, threw 34 pitches yesterday, but the other 2 should be available today. So that is probably one reason that I'm not getting to the Tigers quite as much, as I know that does factor into our projections. Since they are simulation-based projections, you have the ability to say, all right, well, we like this opening matchup that Riley Green and Kerry Carpenter, et cetera, have against Payante, but, it's the 5th or 6th inning, they're coming up again, and now they're facing a lefty. We have the ability to factor that into our projections very easily, and so that is probably why they are being pulled down a little bit as well. Steven Leibowitz mentioned Herrera, only 2,700 on FanDuel. Yeah, good call there. That's a good price point. Obviously, everything is still relative to everything else on that site, but much more favorable salary on FanDuel than DraftKings for Herrera. And then finally wrapping this one up with, I guess, one of the more interesting things that I have to say from an exposure standpoint, at least. Shane Smith taking on Logan Evans in Chicago. Shane Smith, 7K price tag. Logan Evans, 6,500. About 10% projected ownership coming into Evans, about 13% coming into Shane Smith. I'm only getting about 5% of Logan Evans going up against the White Sox. It's obviously a good matchup. We have him projected to go a little north of 5 innings as we do Shane Smith, but only about 11 fantasy points projected there. He doesn't project as a particularly good pitcher. 21% strikeout percentage in 5 starts at AAA this season. 107 innings at AA last year, struck out 22% of hitters, projects to be like a 17% K guy going forward, around a 4.5 FIP. It is a good matchup, like everybody knows, against the White Sox. They are the 2nd worst offense overall against right-handed pitching this year. They rank 8th in strikeout percentage. We do have their lineup today. They have Matt Tyson there, which is a little bit of a strikeout upgrade at catcher. It's not the worst lineup they could run out there, but their lineup can't possibly be good. So it's not bad to get to Evans on this slate at 6,500. It's not like we have great pitching. But the guy that I'm getting a lot of, which scares me, but I also don't really mind it, is Shane Smith. I'm getting 41% Smith at 7K right now. Like, that's an aggressive stand on Smith. I'm not recommending anybody just go jam in Shane Smith. I certainly don't feel good about it. But at the same time, what pitchers have I felt good about on this slate outside of Hunter Brown? Like, even from a talent standpoint, there's no pitching on this slate. There are no pitchers on this slate that I think are actually like above average major league pitchers in terms of ability, other than Hunter Brown and Max Meyer. And Max Meyer is facing the Cubs. So I don't know. I don't hate that I'm just kind of landing on Shane Smith at 7K, modest ownership. He hasn't been bad. Like, he hasn't been good, but he has so far this season a 21% strikeout percentage. That's in line with what he projects for going forward. 95 stuff plus grade is not great, but it's not bad. 104.8 pitching plus is actually above average. He's commanded the ball well, it seems. The stuff is at least decent. He's been league average in my outcome metric, looking for ground balls, infield pop-ups, and strikeouts. The Mariners are a tough matchup. They've been a very good offense, overperforming to some extent this year, but they do also rank 9th in strikeout percentage. They rank 8th in WRC+. We are seeing them kind of level out pretty quickly. They started the year off as one of the most difficult strikeout matchups and the most productive offense after last year being an offense that had power but struck out a ton. They did change hitting coaches. They changed philosophies, but you are seeing things kind of stabilize where they're falling back to being a good offense, but not the best, and being an offense that does strike out some, even if it's not the most in baseball. So I'm not looking at this and saying, I think Shane Smith is definitely going to have a good game here. I think that the team total for the Mariners is just crazy high. I don't understand why it's there. It's not that at all. But in terms of talent, like Shane Smith is not worse than is not definitely worse than any pitcher on this slate other than Max Meyer and Hunter Brown. Price is similar to these other cheap guys. Ownership is similar. If this is where I just kind of roll the dice, so be it. If I lose some of it and it turns into some more Logan Evans or Payante or whoever else, like I'm not going to be mad about that either. But in the context of the slate, if this is a stand that I'm taking, I'm okay with it. You look at our projections and we have a 14 fantasy point projection on Shane Smith. I'm not sure if we had the Mariners lineup when I ran everything, but yeah, this is the same projection that I had when I ran everything. If you just look at all the pitchers today, I think he's our third highest projected pitcher on the slate because Gavin Williams isn't actually on the slate. So, you have him very similar to Horton, very similar to Bradley. He's $1,000 less than Horton. He's only 300 more than Bradley. Paddock's not on the slate. So then you get a little bit of a drop there to Sagano and Payante. A lot of this does just speak to the lack of pitching talent on the slate, but I'm rolling the dice on some Shane Smith and hopefully it works out. On the offensive side for Seattle, I am getting to them a bit as well. I think this is very similar to the Taj Bradley spot. You can kind of see from like a portfolio standpoint, what I appear to be doing is taking stands on what I think are the two most talented SP2s, $6,700 Taj Bradley and $7K Shane Smith. And then I'm getting to plenty of the offenses against them too, because even though I think they are the two best, most talented, cheap pitchers, they're still facing offenses that can do damage. And I don't think it's like any sort of high probability spot for them. I think it's kind of just like the best out of a pile of shit. And so still getting to 24% Cal Raleigh. He's projected for 16% ownership. There's like 10 to 20% ownership projected to all of Raleigh, Polanco, Crawford, Rodriguez, and Arozarena. I'm getting around the field or a little bit higher on all of Raleigh, Polanco, Crawford, Rodriguez. I'm like 2x the field on 3K. Rowdy Tellez, who's actually hit the ball really well this year, has a very high expected ISO against right-handed pitching. He does carry pinch hit risk, but still getting to him. And one thing that is nice about Tellez is that he's buried in between right-handed hitters. So it's actually kind of difficult for the White Sox to match up because you have Cal Raleigh and Randy Arozarena before Tellez. You have Taveras, who's a switch hitter, and more after him. So if they just bring in a lefty to face Tellez, that lefty, unless it's like 2 outs at the end of an inning, that lefty then has to face Taveras more as well. So that does lower the pinch hit likelihood at least a little bit for Rowdy Tellez. So I am getting to some of him. I'm getting around 7% Arozarena, 5% Taveras. Obviously, Cal Raleigh being the priority for me is not an issue at all. And then on the other side for the White Sox, I'm getting to them some. The matchup against Evans isn't bad. The White Sox themselves obviously suck, but 10% projected ownership to Miguel Vargas is the highest mark on the slate. I'm getting about 15% of him. 8% Luis Robert. I'm getting 13%. He apparently can't hit anymore, and kind of said as much the other day too. He was asked if he expected to be moved at the trade deadline, and his response was something along the lines of, with the way I'm playing, I can't imagine anybody would want me. But he does still steal bases, and he's only 4,400 batting cleanup. So maybe he remembers how to hit, maybe he doesn't. But at the very least, if he can just get on base against Logan Evans, he is likely to at least try and run. So far this season, against right-handed pitching, he does still have a 180 expected ISO as well. So while he hasn't been good, 317 expected WOBA, 180 expected ISO, he hasn't been nearly as bad as his 229 actual WOBA and 105 actual ISO suggest either. So I'm fine getting there. I'm getting the 10% Chase Meadroth leading off at 3,200 at shortstop. Don't mind that. And I'm getting like 5 to 10% Matt Tice, Palacios, Vaughn, Sosa. So I'm getting to the White Sox a bit, but not any huge part of my portfolio here. So to recap everything, pitching that I'm prioritizing, Hunter Brown, Shane Smith, Taj Bradley at the top, and then a little bit of a drop off to Cade Horton, and then another drop off to Max Meyer and everybody else. At catcher, Agustin Ramirez, Cal Raleigh, Yainer Diaz, Adley Rutschman. First base, Rhys Hoskins, Michael Busch, Eric Wagaman at the top, but first base is very flat for me. Second base, Bryce Turang, Jorge Polanco, Otto Lopez, and Jose Altuve. Third base, getting to Isaac Paredes, Miguel Vargas, Ramon Urias, Caleb Durbin for value, Yandy Diaz. Shortstop, Jeremy Pena, Gunnar Henderson, and then a drop off to JP Crawford and Chase Meadroth. In the outfield, Pete Crow Armstrong, huge priority for me. I'm getting a lot of Cedric Mullins, but that probably will drop, assuming he isn't actually going to lead off. Kyle Tucker, Christian Yelich, Jackson Churio, Jesus Sanchez as a value bat. All stack types, getting to the Cubs, the Astros, the Marlins, the Orioles, and the Brewers as my top 5. In 5-mans, it's the Orioles, the Astros, the Marlins, the White Sox, and the Mariners. 4-mans, the Astros, the Brewers, the Rays, the Marlins, and the O's. That's all I have for you on this one. Thanks for checking out the show. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. And I will be back here later today to talk about tonight's main slate. Probably going to do that around 4:30 as usual. So be sure to check that out as well. Good luck on your lineups this afternoon.